everyone, I'm Captain Logan, and welcome back to the Different and Deadly Comic Vault. Today we're going to take a look at a prized possession of mine. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 129, and I'm going to handle this very delicately. This is in no way whatsoever a pristine edition of this, a pristine copy of this comic book, but this is the very first appearance of the Punisher. This is a first edition. If I had to grade this, unfortunately, it's somewhere between poor and fair. It's still, the cover is still intact. The spine's not great. It's somewhat discolored inside. It's maybe got a little bit of water damage. It's not in the best of shape, but I've always been really happy to own this. This is something I've had in my collection since I was a kid. I think my dad found this for me at a flea market when I was 12 or 13. And up until now, I've never taken it out of the sleeve and thumbed through it and looked at it. I've always just had this as a collector's item, and I didn't want to, like I said, it's not in the best of shape. I didn't want to ruin it, but I'm being very careful with it right now, and I went ahead and opened it up and read it because I wanted to read my copy finally, so I went ahead and popped it open, and I might have, at some point a long time ago, actually read a copy of this. I probably have a reprint somewhere, but I didn't remember anything about it, and I thought it might be fun to take a look at it out of context and talk about it somewhat in relation to, and just because this just came out, Daredevil Season 2, and talk about how close this Punisher is and how close or far away this version is to the version in the TV show. Dan and I, a while back, were starting a really fun, neat series called Spider-Man Page by Page. Unfortunately, we only got a couple issues into that, and we haven't had the time to continue working on it. Our schedules have not lined up to do that regularly, and so we've not gotten back into it. If we ever go back to that, or if we do it in some other form, Dan and I have talked about maybe just having him do them on his own so that we can get them out more often. We don't have a plan for it right now, unfortunately, but in case that never happens, I thought it would be fun to go ahead and look at this, and even if it does, there's no problem going back and taking another gander at it down the road, but it's issue number 129, so we have another 127 of these to go before we finally get there. This issue takes place only a few after the death of Gwen Stacy, and Peter Parker is dealing with all kinds of trauma and tragedy, and as he often is in his life, and trying to decide if he's just gonna be miserable for the rest of his life, because being Spider-Man is kind of turning out to be horrible, and yet, of course, with his sense of responsibility, he feels the need to keep on trucking, or to keep on slinging, but however, at the beginning of this, he unusually, and this might be the first time it happens, is complaining about how much he hates web slinging right now, and as Dan and I talked about a lot when we were in our very lengthy discussions about the first couple issues of Amazing Spider-Man, he usually is talking about how much he loves doing that, and if there's one thing that he can fall back on for a little glimmer of happiness, it's enjoying swinging around and using his powers and enjoying the fruit of his technology making laurels. And he's in such dire straits and having such a bad time right now that he can't even find any comfort in that, and I really like that. That tells you where he is right now. By the way, I should mention, of course, who wrote and drew this. This is a Jerry Conway story with art by Ross Andrew, and I didn't know that. That's not a name that I remember outside of Spider-Man, really, and I'm sure somebody will leave comments and tell me about all kinds of things that he's drawn, but this is a slightly more muscular Spider-Man than in the Steve Ditko days. We were in a place here where he was starting to be drawn a little bit more muscular, and overall I like the art in this quite a bit. The Punisher in the face is drawn differently than we really see him later. I don't remember the Punisher always having this really extreme widow's peak. Maybe he has that a lot in other places, and I just don't remember. And of course, I'm not a big Punisher person, but he's drawn a little bit differently here than I'm used to seeing him. But he's definitely stocky and well built, and looks like a Marine man. And of course, that's talked about here, and that's one of the only details we actually get about the Punisher. As I said, this is shortly after the death of Gwen Stacy. Spider-Man is being blamed by the Punisher for the death of Norman Osborn, and Spider-Man and Peter Parker is keeping the fact that that's of course where some of the storyline for Sam Raimi's Spider-Man movies comes from, where Peter Parker is keeping the death of Norman Osborn away from Harry Osborn, and Harry starts to go kind of nuts because his father is dead, and Harry actually is becoming the Green Goblin as this is going on. But somewhat amusingly, there's an editor's note that says, but we'll deal with that in the next issue. We just want to put a pin in it and let you know that that's a thing that informs this and is going on right now. I should mention that this is an issue that's very easy to read on its own, and that is true of a lot of comics from this period, which is something that I really like and kind of miss sometimes about modern comics. It's very much in the middle of a long-form narrative. It is very, very soap opera, but there's plenty of recap, and if you're used to, of course, modern comics, that might be slightly irritating, the constant recap, and also just how wordy these comics are. I'm very used to it. I don't mind it, and there's a charm to it that, I sometimes miss, and it's a lot of fun to go back to. So you're very caught up on where everything is, and we know where Peter Parker stands right now with Mary Jane, and that they're just kind of friends, and she's considering for a second. We do have one moment with her here too, and I feel like sometimes we kind of, in comics from this period, and in this issue in particular, we will jump to a particular character just to kind of show you where they are. They're not really informing this particular issue very much, but in the grander scheme, it wants to make sure that you know what's going on right now with particular characters. And just where Peter Parker stands with people. So anyway, Mary Jane has this moment that is amusingly, unintentionally making her look a little bit unsympathetic, where she says, I would like to maybe start dating Peter Parker, but he just not that long ago had a girlfriend who died, and he's just no fun right now. And the thing I care most about is fun, fun, fun. And she has these soft balloons where she says that. And I think that's just absolutely hilarious. It's a thing I understand, that like, it's trying to make it seem like she's empathetic toward Peter Parker, but that she just doesn't want that kind of baggage in her life right now, and that makes sense, but the way it's worded, it really sounds like, his girlfriend died, that's no fun, I don't want to deal with that guy right now, and I think it's unintentionally hilarious. So anyway, the Punisher thinks that Spider-Man has killed Norman Osborn, and so he's after him for that, and his worldview and the way he operates is very similar to what we're used to with the Punisher. By and large, he is the same character. He has a particular moral code. He has a particular way he goes about killing the bad guys, and for him, justice is taking out the bad people so that they can't make any more bad things happen. All we really know about him is that he had some kind of major tragedy in his past, which we don't really get until the very end, and even then, no details whatsoever about it. In fact, we're not even told that by the Punisher, and he doesn't even talk about it. In fact, I don't think even Frank Castle's name is dropped. I think he's just the Punisher here, and he's this very mysterious kind of background character, or as background as you can get when every character that's practically on the page has thought balloons. I don't know that he ever has a thought balloon, but he talks a lot for a guy that's supposed to be kind of mysterious. And anyway, but Spider-Man surmises at the end that he's got to have something, really terrible in his past, and of course he kind of says that. The Punisher doesn't deny it, and he has this great line where he says, let me find this. He asks him. He asked the Punisher what it is. Okay, yeah, so this is nearly a confirmation, and he says, how come, you said you were a Marine, how come we're fighting over here? He says, basically, what's your motivation? And the Punisher says, that's my business, superhero, not yours. Maybe when I'm dead, it'll mean something. And then Spider-Man says, something tells me that man's got problems that make mine look like a birthday party. I like that line a lot. And so basically, the Punisher is going after Spider-Man, and at one point, Spider-Man falls off of a roof, and the Punisher thinks that he's dead, and that doesn't compute for the Punisher and fit within his code, because Spider-Man is to him a murderer and somebody that needs to die, and justice requires it to be a deliberate kill, and that just falling off a roof and dying on accident isn't good enough. And so he ends up finding Spider-Man again after he thinks that he's dead, and is glad that he gets the chance to try again. And Spider-Man's able to convince him by the end that he probably hasn't killed Norman Osborn, because there's another guy that does get killed by the Jackal, who is working with the Punisher and was a friend of the Punisher. So now he has got more of a personal motivation to go after Spider-Man. I almost kind of wish we'd led with that in a way, that it wasn't about going after because Spider-Man killed Norman Osborn, but that he thinks that Spider-Man killed a friend of his, and of course he's being manipulated by the Jackal, and the Jackal could have easily made that a frame job in the first place. So I kind of, part of me almost wishes that we'd started there. But anyway, by the end, as I said, Spider-Man's able to convince the Punisher that, of course, he didn't kill the Punisher's friend, this Reese guy, and so I guess the Punisher kind of decides, well, I need to go after the Jackal, and maybe you didn't actually kill Norman Osborn, but he doesn't say that. He just kind of, now I'm after the Jackal, and so he runs off, and he calls him a superhero. So I guess they're as square as they're going to be. I like there's no punches pulled here, that the Punisher really does kill people, and that that makes him something that Spider-Man has never dealt with before, and he's kind of scary because his heart seems to sort of be in the right place, but he's straight up taking out the bad guys with guns. And so if you didn't know about that, it's an important thing to note that he actually is, he is pretty ruthless, and he's deadly and dangerous and different. He's different and deadly, and I like that we have a cover that is not that is accurate, and not acting like this guy is cooler and more unusual than he is. This was a very different kind of character to put in a book like this, and as a lot of people, including Vince back when he was on the channel, have mentioned, the Punisher seems to be directly inspired by a movie called Death Wish. And in fact, I meant to mention this on the Daredevil spoiler cast, but that movie is evoked in that season. And that's referenced, and I thought it was kind of, it's on the nose, but I thought it was kind of fun that we straight up mentioned that. And anyway, so we say he's different and deadly on the cover, and he certainly is. This is a cover that has been homaged and lampooned over and over again. It's probably one of the most famous Spider-Man covers and one of the most famous covers in Marvel. We see this almost as often as we do the Amazing Fantasy cover, and there's a couple of other. There's maybe only one or two other Marvel covers that is more famous and that you see homaged and stuff more often than this. All of course, your classic Spider-Man tropes and ideas and motifs and things are here. As I said, Peter Parker is in a really terrible place in his life, and he's just trying to cope with everything, and not very much is going his way. I think it's kind of funny that he goes into the Daily Bugle, and J. Jonah Jameson is like, we need pictures of the Punisher, and he's freaking out on Peter Parker because he doesn't have pictures yet. He's like, obviously that's your job, go get the pictures. And I think it's funny that he's wanting this kid to go get I guess he's college age at this point, to go get in harm's way to get pictures of this crazy serial killer guy. And I mean, I get that journalism is about sometimes, putting yourself in harm's way in order to get to the truth. But I think I think most of the time we probably aren't seeing journalists like trying to themselves run down the street and hunt down the killers in order to get a shot of them before they've been taken to prison. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a journalist. I'm not in that world. I might be totally naive and have no idea what I'm talking about. But that seems like something that generally the guy that runs the newspaper is probably not going to try to get his his photographers to go do, but you know, what do I know? But anyway, the Punisher is by and large the same character that he is later on, and as I said, it's really unusual to have a character like this where he is a villain, but you can see where he's coming from, and he's very much a sympathetic villain. Even before we have very much from him, I don't think that anybody would have read this issue and necessarily thought this is a guy that's going to be a superhero and get his own book. And of course, the Punisher is not really a superhero, but he is, you know, often sympathetic in the sense that you understand why he's doing what he's doing, and that in his mind, he's getting justice for people. The last thing I want to mention is his relationship with the Jackal. It's really odd that the Punisher would ally himself with someone called the Jackal. There's even a place where there's this period, of course, has a whole lot of, even in serious comics like this, relatively serious comics, has a lot of editor's notes and narration boxes and things that are kind of self-aware and making kind of tongue-in-cheek and almost making fun of their own book. And there's a part where it says, the Jackal is turning on the Punisher as his name would suggest, and that immediately makes me think, yeah, why would the Punisher work with this guy, and with a name like that? And it's got to be clear to the Punisher very, very early on that this guy's part of the problem. I mean, he's really conniving. He's really manipulative. It should be really obvious to him that this is the last person you would team up with in order to, as the Punisher says he wants to do, destroy all of organized crime. This guy looks like he might be kind of a part of that, or if he's not, something just as bad or worse. But those things are part of the charm, and the kinds of things that, for whatever reason, were easier to swallow during this period, where it feels realistic and also heightened and not realistic all at the same time. And with a little bit of a historical perspective, it's really easy to get past things like that. But it is kind of weird that he would work with a guy like the Jackal. Anyway, everybody, thanks as always for watching. Sure appreciate it. That's going to be it for me today on the Comic Vault, and fun to finally talk about this just a little bit. And like I said, kind of one of my prized possessions. Down the road, if I could afford it, it would be fun to get a better copy of this, a copy in better shape. But this is the value of this continues to skyrocket, especially as the Punisher is featured more and more in other media and stuff. I know that, let's see, the last time I priced this, it was, and I think even in this condition, it was like a $600 comic book, and I don't know what it's worth now. I honestly, looking at the condition of it, I really doubt that mine is worth that much, but I've not looked in a long time at what this is worth. Now, I should have done that before I started this, but that shows you how much I pay attention to value of comics. But it's always been one of my favorite things in my collection, and fun to finally pop it open very carefully and gracefully and talk to you about it. Anyway, everybody, thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on The Comic Vault.